Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, which is Nader Safinya. Hi, Nader.
Hi, Adi. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. We're going to have a great conversation, one of my favorite topics, which is culture. And I'm going to introduce you. So you are the founder of Blackribbit, the culture branding company.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool, and we're going to talk about that. So you have a vision to make humanity harmonious by lifting the relationship with the workplace. You're redefining how we think about growth, operationalizing culture and brand, which I love that topic because this is one of the questions that I always ask. Can we make it operational, the culture, and systematize it? And I actually just wrote an article about it as well. So we're going to have a great conversation. I have a lot of questions to ask you about that. And you help organizations move 56 times faster and guiding the workforce to harmonize with AI. Where did we get to the 56 times faster?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the program is really interesting. It started because I noticed that there was a big gap between what companies say and what they actually do. So what I identified was that organizations are traditionally, basically most of the time, creating two very separate experiences. They're designing for two separate experiences. Branding, sales, marketing, and leadership is focused exclusively on the customer experience. And then you have like change management, HR, recruiting, what have you, focused on the employee experience. And these two sides never talk. So there's this great disconnect between the employee-employer and employee-customer relationship. So ultimately, the market is not getting what the market sees. And the first place you notice this break is actually in the job application process. So what I realized was that there lacks a model to create these two experiences simultaneously. So instead of designing them separately, design them together. What that means is you're designing quite literally the customer brand and the employer brand at the same time, so that they have this. There's a very clear bridge between what customers experience and what employees experience, so that ultimately, culture branding in my vernacular dictates that your organizational values at their most fundamental, so essentially three non-negotiable values, are connected to every single experience across the board. That way, when a customer and an employee meet for the first time, they actually tell the same story. Because when you act, those three are dependent on what your organization believes in, because a culture by definition is essentially your lived belief system. So whatever the belief system of this organization is can be distilled down to three specific ones. So in my case, for example, Blackribbit's is reliability, compassion, and deliberate action. And these are designed very intentionally, making sure that one cannot exist without the other two.
So let's talk about reliability. I love that. So reliability, for instance.
Yeah.
So we have the customer experience with reliability, or your client experience with reliability, and you have your team member experience with reliability. So give us some examples of how that is.
Yeah, reliability, if you can believe it, I've had interviews where people ask me, what do you mean by reliability? And I say, well, you do what you say you're going to do. It's just that simple. If you say something, then you act on it. If you can't show up, say you can't show up. Don't say okay to something and then not deliver. It's really is just the concept of keeping your promise. And in our case, because we have the three fundamentals, reliability, compassion, and deliberate action, what that means is if you are reliable and compassionate but not deliberate, that means you show up, you listen, but you don't do anything about it. If you if you're compassionate and deliberate but not reliable, what difference does it make? Because you're not even there to begin with.
Yeah.
And if you're reliable and deliberate but you lack compassion, you might do the wrong thing because you didn't listen to what was needed. So all three have to exist in order to elicit a very specific response, which in our case is compassionate design, and our brand is compassionate design.
Right. So when you talk about it in terms of the culture, let's dive in a little bit how it applies to a culture. So obviously you want to hire for culture. So you want to hire employees or team members that have that particular, those three components. But do you also deliver from the company to them so they experience that as as the boss, as the founder?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, going back to your original question about the 56 times
56,
faster decision making. So the program that I built to design the two strategies at the same time, customer and employer brand simultaneously, is called the inside outside in model, and it became the culture brand program. And from that was born, it actually emerged from this program inherently, was the culture brand statement, which basically is we do everything we do because we value those three things and we want people to experience something specific. So ABC, whatever the elicited response is, the desired elicited response, that's your brand. So when you have that statement, that's so simple in its elegance, and like there's just absolutely no fat on that statement. That becomes a litmus test. It becomes a decision-making tool. So it removes subjectivity and everything becomes objective. It also removes hierarchy and it democratizes decision-making. Yeah, I said that. That's a bold statement. And so what happens is, because now you have this litmus test, you can run your decisions through this filter. Does every decision I'm making honor reliability, compassion, and deliberate action? If the answer is yes, then you will inherently elicit compassionate design. If one of those questions the response to one of those questions is no, then you need to readjust it and reframe your decision to honor those three pillars. And to really increase the decision-making speed, I created an AI tool around this decision-making filter. So you can actually input your decisions into this tool and it'll just spit out, based on the strategy that you've created, the communication foundation, the culture brand framework, whether this decision aligns with your culture brand statement or not. And if it doesn't, it'll actually give you suggestions on how to align it. So with that, you're increasing decision-making speeds by, again, like 56 times.
And it's all aligning. Yeah. So give an example, for instance, of a decision that you can ask the AI, hey, does that align with my core values or my culture?
Yeah.
And it says no, and some suggestions. So can I give us some examples? I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, I'll give you a really good one. It's a fun one because everyone experiences it. So imagine everyone has a hiring and firing policy. Like, it can be this complex. It can be as simple as what kind of pens should we get for the office, all the way to complex problems. So if you want to develop a hiring and firing policy, when you fire people, it's like a breakup. There's a nice way to break up with people and there's a mean way to break up with people. So if you want to honor your brand, for example, in our case, if you want to be reliable, compassionate, and deliberate, then you can ask this tool or ask yourself, if I send an email to someone and say you're no longer working here, consider this your last day, don't come in on Monday, Okay, is that deliberate? Yeah, that's pretty deliberate. Is it compassionate? Not
No.
really. Is it reliable? Sure. Because you told them what they needed to hear and you were intentional about it, but you were pretty mean about it. So
Well,
that's,
also the reliability, it depends on how you look at reliability, because being reliable for me is like, that you can trust somebody. So if that came out of the blue, for instance, without any explanation or anything that led to it, it's not reliable, because from one day to another, you can
yeah,
actually get fired. And to your point, it also doesn't allow there is no reliability that you are going to do what you say you're going to do, because if you say you're
yeah,
going to be compassionate but you do it that way, you're also breaking the reliability. And also the
exactly.
deliberate, you're not being deliberate, because being deliberate is, yeah, I mean, maybe you're being deliberate about sending the message, but you have to be deliberate about being compassionate and be reliable and
Yeah,
protecting your brand. So you are, maybe you did it from a spur of a moment, but it's not really. So I can see how it all can combine into one action,
yeah.
has to have the other two together.
And what you just did there is a perfect response because you added conditionals. So because that's literally what happens, because you can describe what I just did and in a silo you can create a single experience, single interaction, but you don't know the context of it. So you need to know, has this person been underperforming? Have you spoken to them before? Have you created some sort of action plan? Is there an improvement plan, and so on?
Because you can
And
also be, if there was, let's say there was, and this is like you did all of that, and it's not improving, at some point it can align to all three, because you're reliable. You said you're going to give them
yeah,
the last chance that they didn't go with it. Well, you are reliable, because otherwise it can go the other way. Deliberate, yes, you were very much intentional about that. And compassionate, to a degree it is, because you're compassionate probably to the rest of the team members, that
yeah,
particular person was not acting, or the clients that they were not servicing. Also for themselves, because if somebody doesn't put the foot down and say, that's it, it's not compassion. You're being
that's
compassionate, but
right.
I care about that person, but that's it, because I gave them so many chances.
Exactly
So
right.
it
Yeah.
can be looked, I mean, I think it's a viewpoint. So how do you give that viewpoint to an AI tool? I mean, do you find that that AI tool can really look at the different what if scenarios and act like a
Yeah,
human?
absolutely. Because you're still not talking about feelings. You're talking about facts. Because the whole point of the culture brand statement is that as long as those values are being honored, then all you have to do is look at the facts. That's why it removes subjectivity from the equation. So
Yeah.
basically, without repeating what we just said, you go through what you and I just talked about. So you tell the AI, maybe the AI responds the way you did. It'll say, well, is this the first time this person is hearing this message? Is this a second time? Was there warnings beforehand? And then you might explain, yes, in fact, we've been working with him for about 6 weeks trying to create improvement plans and so on. And this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and then explain to it how the employee has been reacting, if they have lived up to their promises or not, and so on, all the action items, et cetera. And then it'll keep adjusting to ensure that, okay, your decision here does in fact honor, those three pillars, and you are eliciting compassionate design. So you are in fact being truthful with respect to your culture brand statement.
That's very true. So how do you get to the cultural brand statement? What's the process to get to create those statements?
So that's where all the work comes in. So the full culture brand program, at its core, is a 16-week program. And the first 2 months, the first 8 weeks, let me rephrase, the first 4 weeks is an evaluation period where we're interviewing people. We're doing a lot of data gathering, a lot of research. We're using a tool that we have called the Culture MRI, which actually measures workforce engagement, actually applies it to bottom line. It applies it to a framework of 15 human needs and motivations. We also have our qualitative studies, workshops, observational studies. We talk to like 40 people over 2 weeks, including leadership all the way down to like the door guy, the custodian. We want to make sure that we're talking to everyone, not just leadership. And then we speak to their customers and their customers' customers and so on to ensure, to really just understand what the underlying ingrained truthful perception of this place is from all the different angles. And one thing that I make very clear, even with my prospects, is we're not here to brand your products or your services. We're here to brand your and formalize your identity at its innermost core of the organization as a whole. So like, that's why you need to speak to everyone. If I want to ask, if I ask you, what is a D like, you'll give me an answer. But then I'll go speak to your family, I'll go speak to your friends, I'll go speak to strangers who've met you once, and really get a consensus of what the combined common perception of a D is, right? And then that becomes the true inner core. And once I understand that, then we go into the second phase and start developing the actual narrative, the strategy, the communication framework that connects the employee experience to the customer experience and really pulls together and distills over and over again the core fundamental non-negotiables. These aren't your like your 5 or 7 core values. These are your fundamental, like, this will never change. This is your instinct. It won't change with your growth. It won't change with your scale or whatever. Even if you move countries, it will always be these 3 things. It's like you and I, throughout our lifetime, we might change certain behaviors, certain perceptions because we learn something and we become more open or whatever. But in our instincts remain the same. Our core truths, whether that means we're honest people or we're tenacious or, we're adventurous or whatever, that always stays the same since we were like teenagers. And that's what I'm identifying. So that's how that happens. And then this is where it gets really fun. Then the culture brand statement emerges out of that after we distill down the 3 values and the feeling that everybody has when they interact with this place. That becomes your brand essence. And then once you have that, now you have your culture brand filter. And then we run the whole strategy through the filter itself to just really align it and optimize it so that it is at its utmost truthful state. So it's very meta, like the tool is born from the strategy, which is then used to optimize the strategy itself.
Wow, that's amazing. What kind of companies are your best clients? What type and what size of companies do you like to work with?
That's the $1 million question. So it's really about size that really defines how how good of a fit they are. Like 30 million and up. Right now we're working with companies around 50 million is like a perfect size as far as revenue, and about 150 to 500 workforce employee headcount. As far as industry goes, it really doesn't matter. I know no one likes to hear that, but like currently we're working with public accounting firms, we're working with manufacturing firms, we're working with fintech. Fintech is a very interesting space, especially when it comes to brand. Right now those 3 are sort of our primary targets.
Great. Now, what results have you seen? Share some results that you have seen, like after they have the tool and they're using the tool for decision making. And I guess that's not just for decision making, it can also be used for content, right? For the voice of the of the brand. For basically, it's your brand. It's an additional aspect to the branding. I mean, it is the branding because it's who you are. Yeah. So like, for instance, I have a voice and communication policy that I wrote to really represent who we are. then you can run something like that through that filter, and it aligns with your 3 core values, not core values, but 3 competencies, you would call it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, that's a really good point that you brought up. So that's why the full comprehensive culture brand strategy is still required. You still need that, which includes your tone of voice, your mission and vision statement, your organizational values, your the benefits, the different target audiences, and so on. And with that comes all of your writing guidelines, your messaging frameworks, your templates for how to say what in what context. Excuse me. If it's a face-to-face human interaction, if it's an online publication, if it's a book, if it's whatever, like how do you talk? When do you talk? How do you talk in what situations? And so again, you can use that as a human. You can just read that stuff and study it and understand how to use it. The writing guidelines literally come with instructions. We write full-on instructions with checklists and all this grammatical checklist, forbidden words lists, things like this. And
I like the
and then
forbidden words list. Like for me, in my
yeah, it's
company,
my
I created
favorite.
that. And like the word just is just forbidden,
Yeah,
I'm just checking in, I'm just doing this. It's just like, it's not who we are.
yeah,
And it is very important. Like, what are the forbidden words to do? Like, how do you write? And today with AI, for AI to be successful, you have to fit it the
yeah,
information of who you are, not the other way around. It's not the AI is going to tell you who you are. So that's why what you're doing, I think, is very important, because you have to really identify it to almost to a science, to a very minute degree. Is like, okay, how do I communicate? What is my communication? When I feed that as the voice to the AI, I want it to be, for me, it's empathetic, friendly,
yeah.
though professional, to the point, this and this, that and that. Like for us, like our 3 main, how do you, so you call it core competencies, or how do you refer to?
We call it the foundational pillars.
Yeah, the foundation pillars. Like,
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, like for us, we are competent, we are driven, and we're intelligent communicators.
yeah,
So when that happens, because that's what we do, we communicate, we create the content for people, for their processes and procedures, we extract knowledge. And it's truly every team member has that. And if they don't, they're not longer with us for that reason. And it
yeah.
has to be all 3. And yeah, so what you're saying is, I mean, it totally resonates with me, because it's true.
Yeah.
You have to know what it is and stick to it. And that's why you communicate across the brand with that. It's
That's
very,
right. And the thing that's really cool about it, so you asked about some results. Like one thing that I'm personally very proud of, the thing that's so cool about this whole thing to me is that I didn't actually intend for the culture brand filter it wasn't a vision I had. I created the program, and then this tool like emerged from the program. It was birthed by the program itself. So it was a perfect example of good design. The design itself optimized itself, and then this tool came out of that. And when it happened, I had this like holy crap moment, because it was just a beautiful moment to witness. And I said, we just landed on this incredible power tool that was totally unintentional, and it just birthed itself. And so what's cool about this is that it doubles as an unconscious adoption technique to train your staff and anyone to embody the culture and the intended brand inherently, because you're using the tool, the AI tool, as this training model, so that every time you have a thought about something that has to do with the organization or an idea, no matter how simple or how complex, like we discussed, you can run it through this tool that we've created. And because it's fun to use and it's easy, the user starts just inherently adopting the language. They start seeing how to think through the thing. So I've my clients, this, I think you'll appreciate this. My clients will, within weeks, Adi, like not months, not years, like within weeks, they're going, no, this doesn't show authenticities. This doesn't show transformation. It definitely doesn't feel like unique transformative beauty. Like, do you even know what you just said? They're like, what did I say? I said, you're speaking the brand language and you actually understand what it means because what you said is completely accurate. And it's a beautiful thing to witness because as you and I know, adoption is either doesn't happen or it takes incredibly long for it to happen,
That's very true.
especially company wide. You know,
Yeah.
when you're talking about leadership, okay, fine. But like if it's not trickled down and it doesn't permeate and the employee and the work staff don't have true, genuine buy-in, it never permeates all the way through.
You're
And
absolutely right. And that's the thing is that's what I was going to ask you about the adoption and making sure it's being followed. But because you have the tool, it's easy to do that. And
yeah,
if the tool is attractive, then you use it. But what you said, Nader, about the tool cannot become like, it's not about the tool, it's the everything before that. And the tool is the execution. That's why it's
correct.
successful,
That's
because
right.
it actually, you found a solution to expedite something that is needed already, but you didn't leave it in the intellectual or the the more high level. That is great. Now we know what our voice sounds like and we know our pillars and all that, but how do we actually execute it in day to day? And that connection is brilliant.
That's right. Thank you. I really appreciate that because that's therein lies the rub. That's where the tension always lies. Every time, I feel like we're like insurance brokers half the time because they go, "How are you going to be different from the last guy and the last guy?" Like, and I go, I'll wager, all the money in the world that you didn't implement the last program." And they'll go, "Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened." I'm like, "Well, that's what always happens. It never gets implemented properly. Either the agency doesn't have an implementation promise, or they just handed something to you and said, good luck, ciao, or like you didn't have the internal capacity. Like it's always something where implementation and adoption don't take place because change sucks. Extrinsic change sucks. It's always met with resistance. I mean, the
It is.
greatest resistance to extrinsic change is literally war. So, when people don't want things to change because it's not even a question of is this going to be better or not. I don't want to learn anything. That's the attitude. People don't want to learn new things. It's just too complicated. Oh, I have to read what? I have to read how many pages and so on. So this basically eliminates all of that, this little
It does.
tool. And to your point, those who need to truly understand the full capacity of the strategy and so on in order to write for the company, to produce for the company and so on, yes, they're going to need to work a little bit harder. But the tool still provides a foundation for them to go, oh, let me like go do some research and truly understand what's happening here, as opposed to just using it. But when you want, the guy at the front desk or any admin or even HR or whoever to like really be able to feel empowered and be equipped to speak through the lens of the culture and the intended elicited response, then this tool is just magic. And it truly just flattens the decision-making governance. I mean, you can have someone at again, like the front desk can actually challenge the CEO and say, I'm sorry, you're not, what you're doing doesn't honor our way of life here. It doesn't honor what we're trying to capture. And if he argues with him, he can literally go, look, it's right here. It doesn't, I'm not trying to fight with you. Like it just doesn't honor it objectively. And then it's an ego thing. If the guy is cool, he'll be like, you're right. I understand. If
No, it's
not,
very true. It's absolutely true. And what you said about the implementation is so important. I mean, that's also our biggest thing is that, yeah, we document the processes for people, but it's the followed, making sure they're being followed. And we take
Yeah.
I mean, it is sometimes the amount of what it actually takes to make sure it's being followed by all is quite the endeavor. So absolutely.
Yeah.
And if people want to find out more about you and how to reach out to you, how do they do that?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's just my full name, Nader Safinya. You can find me there. You can go to blackribbit.com, reach out through there. I'm very responsive, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you being on this podcast. It's been a great conversation, and it's a subject that is, I'm sure it resonates with a lot of the entrepreneurs that are listening to us, because implementing is, they know they need culture, just like they know they need processes and they need this, they need that. But the question is always, how can I implement it? And you solve that problem, which is fantastic.
Thanks, Adi. Yeah, and it's definitely a question of urgency. This program creates harmony, truly does, in the workplace, and harmony, impacts everything, including your bottom line.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Adi. Such a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.